That song takes some serious chops, doesn't it? It's a beautiful, beautiful rendition of a beautiful song. What stories do you tell about your body? When I was in my early 20s, I came across a quote from C.S. Lewis that became a story that I told about my body. C.S. Lewis writes, "You are a soul. You have a body." And I loved this saying. I loved the transcendence that it implied. You'll notice I say loved. This was a story that flattered my ego and also confirmed my intellectual bias against the body in favor of the mind. We're all learning all the time. We may be souls, but at least right now we are also bodies. Bodies that are glorious and messy and miraculous and challenging and will not be left out. And whatever beliefs we hold dearest, they are brought to life through our actions more than our words and our thoughts. I want us to honor both soul and body here and erase the separation between them to be the place where soul meets body. But all too often when we gather in worship, a word that means to shape the worth, our bodies function mainly to get our brains in the door, or in this case, to get our brains onto Zoom. While we are shaping the worth, holding up the things we most value, we cannot forget that worth and value are not just concepts in the mind, but concepts that play out in and upon our bodies, that matter in this world where our bodies move. We can celebrate the life of the mind and the realm of the spiritual, but it is in our bodies that we shape together here lives, in our bodies that we reach out in relationship to each other, in our bodies that we celebrate and mourn and cry and scream and laugh and love. It is in our bodies that we are together. This is a living tradition in the sense that it is evolving and open to change, but it is also a living tradition in that it is a tradition crafted through our living. And we do not live only in our heads. Earlier in the service, Jody spoke so beautifully about her own experience of awakening from a tradition that placed God up there, out there, and far away. And perhaps you also come out of such a tradition as well. Many of us share that piece of the human story of making God. That way of making God does not exist in a vacuum. We didn't just pull it out of the sky. But it's one of the ways that our culture, our dominant Western-centric culture, reinforces the notion that our bodies are only as important as they are useful, that human life is only as important as it is useful, that human life is not inherently sacred, that some lives matter more than others, that a good person is a productive person. So much about our lives is transactional. You do this for me, so I will do this for you. We see this quid pro quo everywhere, in politics, in corporate policies, in decisions about who deserves access to social services, international aid, in questions of who deserves to feel safe, to feel valued. Even our own lives, our own relationships can fall into the trap of the transactional. the fear that we must be useful in order to be loved, productive in order to be worthy. To practice spirit in the body subverts that story and replaces it with a story where, as writer and activist Adrienne Maree Brown reminds us in her book, Pleasure Activism, a story where feeling good is not frivolous. Feeling good is freedom. But how often does feeling good get onto the to-do list? I don't know about you, but my calendar is pretty full. And pleasure begins to feel like a luxury. Far too often, even the most privileged among us find ourselves put in boxes far too small to contain all of who we are. With our souls' toes pinched and parts of ourselves hidden in shame or exercised in fear, it's easy to feel small, to feel powerless and undeserving, which in turn makes us all the more easy to control. To join spirit to body is to embrace being fully human. To be a pleasure activist, as Adrienne Maree Brown urges us all to become, is about more than enjoyment, sensuality, and joy on the personal level. To be a pleasure activist is to ask, what does it look like on the collective level for us all to feel like we have access to lives that are fulfilling and satisfying? Pleasure activism, Brown writes, is about learning what it means to be satisfiable, to generate from within and from between us an abundance from which we can all have enough. Part of the reason so few of us have a healthy relationship with pleasure is because a small minority of our species hoards the excess of resources, creating a false scarcity, and then trying to sell us joy, sell us back to ourselves. Now, if that doesn't make you mad, I don't know what will. We train ourselves to confuse excess with success, and we mistake indulgence for pleasure. Pleasure activism is about learning what it means to be satisfiable. How deep does that narrative of never being satisfied dig its roots into your life? I know it's buried deep in mine, its roots intertwined with the deep fear that I am not enough either. I will never have enough, and I will never be enough. This is our greatest delusion, a gaping well of not enough that no amount of excess can fill. So what do? Adrienne Maree Brown offers us this antidote. A central aspect of pleasure activism is tapping into the natural abundance that exists within and between us, and between our species and this planet. Pleasure is not one of the spoils of capitalism. It is what our bodies, our human systems, are structures for. It is the aliveness and awakening, the gratitude and humility, the joy and celebration of being miraculous. This week, our spiritual practice challenge is feeling good, finding both spirit and pleasure in our bodies. Jody shared a number of practices that you can try at home, some with the help of videos or tutorials for some specific practices, or through joyful, spirit-filled movement in dance, in running, in stretching, or through showing our bodies the compassion and honor they deserve. This could look like relaxing baths, delicious food, beautiful scents, clothes that feel good on our skin. Choose a practice for the week or pick a different one each day. As has become our practice in recent weeks, I offer you these questions for reflection as well. What story do you tell about your body? Does that story tap into the pleasure of being alive? We become what we practice. How might you practice pleasure with intention? How might we fully inhabit the bodies we have been given? How do we fall in love with them? Each of us has a purpose of our own to find and reclaim. Knowing and celebrating pleasure in your life helps you know that purpose when you find it, helps you know when the moment is right for your enthusiastic consent to life's pleasures and adventures. The body is a place for pleasure and a place for power. May we all enjoy it.